Oh, good. Because I have them too.
Live. In fact, we're live right now.
Okay,
welcome everybody to the Saratoga podcast. I am back. I missed you guys. I'm back with Dan DeFederici and Adam Israel. Welcome. We have a lot to talk about in today's podcast. And you guys, I'm going to skip our usual kind of chit chat, as much as I love our chit chat, and kind of dive right in. I wanted to start off by saying, first of all, this is our 1-year anniversary. We have streamed like countless hours over the last year of this podcast. And I just wanted to say how amazing it's been for me to work with you both and create a space where we can share, information about what's happening in our city that isn't always covered in local media and try to fill in that gap, and also have a space where we can disagree and have great debate. So yay for the 1-year anniversary. Now let's get into this week.
Yeah, real quick. Let's throw in everybody who's watched the show and who's given us feedback and who's who's disagreed with us and who's agreed with us, and that's the point of the show is to be able to discuss in without kind of divulging into name calling and threats and
absolutely
and debauchery.
Which is actually why I wanted to apologize for not being on last week, because you guys had Mayor Kim on, and I'm totally embarrassed to say this, but especially because of what was going on with the homeless and Spa Catholic, that's a really sensitive issue for me. And I could not come on because I was not certain that I could come on and be professional and civil and, have the kind of respectful dialogue and back and forth that we have on this podcast. And so I bowed out, and I'm kind of embarrassed that I was not mature enough in that moment to come on and be able to have those conversations. But so I apologize to you guys that I wasn't here, but hopefully moving forward, I'll be able to pull myself together and have the tough conversations with people that, are potentially, making me very upset with how they're handling certain issues. So I apologize for that. But let's talk about this week's city council meeting, because I was there. I wasn't planning on going. I told my husband, I was like, I'll be back in about 15 minutes. I just want to hear some of the kind of public comment about the homeless issue and the code blue issue. I came back about an hour and a half later, and he said, like, what happened? And I said, I thought that we were going to have like a riot essentially on our hands, because things devolved so dramatically and so emotionally. And I know both of you watched, but essentially what happened was that there was a discussion on homelessness on the mayor's agenda. And everyone has heard about this kind of controversy about the homeless shelter that was supposed to go to the senior center location and the pushback from Spa Catholic, et cetera, et cetera. So on Tuesday night, there were a lot of people at the city council meeting who came to speak up, really largely all of them on behalf of Shelters of Saratoga.
Well, we don't know because
they spoke up in favor of people who are unhoused and the need for a homeless shelter. And really, virtually every every comment was in favor.
But we never got to the end of public comment. So I don't think
that is correct. But
there were a number, if I could just quickly, there were a number of people in line that talked to me that were of the parents group or somehow associated with the parents group from Spa Catholic as well. They just were cut off.
Let me just finish this out for a sec, which is that there were two people who spoke up in, the first maybe 45 minutes on behalf of the Spa Catholic parents and their opposition. And both people got seriously heckled. And one gentleman was talking about an experience he had where he was at a gas station. Someone approached him who was a panhandler. That person subsequently stabbed him. And that person was also staying at a no barrier shelter and was someone whose background had not been checked and had multiple convictions, et cetera, et cetera. And in any other context, it would have been a really heart-wrenching story. And there was a lot about it that was very emotional, but the way it landed was essentially that he was trying to equate anyone who goes to a low barrier shelter as a criminal.
No, he was trying to say that.
I'm not saying he was trying to say that. I'm saying that's how it landed with the group.
I think it landed as the issue is that our homeless population, or any homeless population, it has a higher percentage of substance abuse, of mental disorders, of antisocial behavior, and these can tend to lead to unsafe conditions. So I don't think just dismissing having concerns about the homeless shelter as saying all homeless people are criminals. It's
right.
It's a numbers game.
I'm trying to explain kind of what was happening in the room as a response, and not that it was right or wrong, but it was very hostile essentially to anyone who was going to come speak up in opposition of this shelter moving to the senior center and having a no barrier shelter there. The majority of the room was very vocal about, the opposite. And so the two people that spoke against having Code Blue at the senior center really got heckled and got a lot of shit, especially from the Saratoga BLM folks who were there. And so I know that had I been there and I was a SPA Catholic parent, or I was also there to speak out in opposition in some way, shape, or form, it would have been really intimidating. And I likely would have just been like, I'm not doing this, because it was going to be met with, you were going to get hell from a large group of people that were there in a way that was intimidating and fairly nasty. And I think that we could all probably agree that no one should be heckled at public comment, no matter what they're saying. It's an intimidating situation to begin with, but people should be able to express their opinions, and whether it's favorable or unfavorable to the other people in the city council meeting, you just can't heckle, right? Like, we just shouldn't do that. We should show people enough respect so they can go up, speak their piece, and not be cursed at, shouted at, etc.
Agreed.
Yeah. And I'm getting ahead of myself here, and I know we'll get to this, but also talk so long that you're taking up other people who are behind you a chance to speak, as well as ending the whole meeting so you don't even get a chance to speak. That bothered me as well. And I had friends, whether they're my friends or not, whether they agreed with me or not, they were behind her and they didn't get a chance to speak.
So, but the her you're referring to is essentially what happened was that it turned from public comments that were, generally speaking, everyone stayed within the 2-minute limit, which is what the limit is for public comment at one of these meetings. Generally speaking, people stayed within that limit and were somewhat responsive to Mayor Kim saying, okay, your time is up, etc. Chandler Hickenbottom from Saratoga BLM came up to make a public comment. And I actually have a clip of this kind of moment and how it started that I want to play. And then let's continue to talk about it. Here we go.
Yeah, let's go back to Jason. Let's go back to every single person on this city council. You do absolutely nothing. You don't show up for your Black community. You don't show up to the Black Lives Matter events. Why don't you sit down? I don't need to. Show your racism, baby girl. Keep doing it. Keep doing it. No, I don't need to. Who the fuck are you? I don't listen to Massa at all. I don't listen to Massa at all. Because you out here showing your white supremacy.
Okay. I'm going to entertain. I'm going to move to adjourn. Is there a second?
At the end of the... No, I'm not going anywhere.
All in favor?
Okay, so what you just saw...
My blood pressure rose for a second time this week, just watching that.
When I was there, my Apple Watch kept notifying me that my heart rate was too high because it was really intense. And so basically what you just saw was Chandler Hickenbottom came up and she kind of turned the subject from the homeless and Code Blue and turned it into a criticism of the current council and the promises they had made while they were campaigning, the promises they made to Saratoga BLM as to what they would do when they were in office. And her assertion was that they had not followed through on any of those promises and that they had really just used Saratoga BLM for support and to get elected and then essentially ignored them since they've been in office. And to be honest with you, I think there's a lot of validity to that statement. But when her 2 minutes was up, she did not give flying you-know-what. And she was like, I'm going to speak as long as I want to speak. And at some point, probably 6, 7, 8 minutes into her public comment, there was a group of people on the left side of the room that started screaming like, shut up, sit down. And that's when, that's what you just saw. She turned to them and started getting into it with them. And I probably should have warned people that there was going to be some profane language. So warning, there's going to be profane language throughout this podcast today. And
none of it will come from Robin.
Well, hopefully none of it will come from me. I'm usually the source of that. But there was a lot of profanity in some of these comments. And so after that confrontation that you just saw started, Mayor Kim tries to adjourn the meeting. The city council kind of starts getting up. The room turned into just total chaos. Everyone was shouting at everybody. And at one point, Officer Barrett, who is typically the police officer who's assigned to city council meetings, walked in. And I will say he walked in with his arms crossed. He walked in very slowly. And that triggered a very emotional and angry response from some of the other members of BLM saying that, you know, it was traumatizing just to see him there, that he shouldn't be walking up on Chandler. And there were screams to, you know, get him the hell out of there. And so Mayor Kim did ask him to leave. This is kind of when things, you know, this was the beginning of the point of no return. And they were very critical of the city council, in particular, Commissioner Jason Golub, who is the first Black city council member we have ever had. And they were very critical of Commissioner Songvi, and apparently a song that she sang at an event of theirs. They, you know, accused the whole council of only going to events that were about pride or about women, but not coming to BLM events. And I'm just kind of curious about, you know, what do you guys also think that there were a lot of promises made here to BLM when these folks were campaigning that they didn't follow through on? Because that is what I believe, but I'm curious what your perspective is.
Adam, if you don't mind, I'll jump in. And just, you know, watching it online like I did, you just don't, it's the first meeting I said, geez, I needed to be there, because you get that narrow view. Plus, it got cut off at one point purposely. So you lose everything. You lose room. Before I answer you, Robin, were you, and I think I know the answer, I think you sort of said this, were you expecting this to break out into a physical altercation?
So at one point I went to leave, and when I was leaving, I walked out the door, and there were 5 or 6 police officers that were coming in, and I kind of panicked because I just knew that the sight of a group of police officers walking in was going to be like the final straw in terms of, like, you know, fueling the fire. And had they come in a way that was aggressive, or even just walked in general, that was when I was worried that things were potentially going to go beyond words and just fighting and get physical, and that there was actually a danger there for people's safety. But that group of officers essentially came in very quietly and then left. Later on, I was told by one of the police officers that they wanted to bring up some of the new recruits so they could observe what can happen at some of these council meetings, and then talk to them about how they handle it, and how they handle it within the department. So I don't believe they were brought in to restore order. The mayor certainly did not ask for them to come and clear the room or arrest anyone. But I think they were there to, you know, witness how some of these meetings can devolve, and how the council and the mayor can sometimes lose control, and things can get very heated. And, you know, how do we handle that? How do they handle that as a police department? How do they handle a response or a request from the mayor to come in or leave or whatnot? But they did leave, so there was no police presence in there. And that, in this particular situation, that did take the temperature down enough so that I wasn't concerned that the yelling and screaming was going to become anything more than just yelling and screaming.
See, let me go back to your question, Robin, about the current city council and their kind of complex relationship with BLM.
Yeah.
You know, we saw it because you and I were involved in that campaign season. Certainly BLM, they, you know, ran and you know, kind of side by side with the Democrats. When we went to the Democratic convention to shake the winners' hands, they were there. You know, all these members who were at the city council meeting yesterday or 2 days ago. But and I think I've said this, and I think we've talked about this since the beginning, is that there's going to be one of two things happening. That's going to be either the city council is going to fall out of favor with the city or the BLM group, because the BLM group's demands and what they want to see done are just not reasonable. I mean, they literally call to abolish the police. So
to that point, real quick, Adam, they have really consolidated their message over the last 2+ years, and their message now is a complete abolishment of the police. That is their solution. That is what they want to see happen, and what they articulated at the council meeting, and also at their the protest and kind of vigil they had for Tyree Nichols last week. So I just wanted to clarify that point. But
right, yeah, exactly. And so how would that? I think any reasonable person could think that's insane, right? should police have sensitivity and de-escalation training? Absolutely. These are what we saw yesterday, and you saw this in the shouts to Commissioner Golub, who is a black man, about him not standing up for BLM causes, or accusing the city council members of putting men and women of color in positions that don't represent necessarily Saratoga BLM. The problem is they've kind of hijacked this message. That's a very pertinent message right now. I mean, everybody saw what happened to Tyreek Nichols and was sickened, right? So absolutely, we need to work towards meaningful police reform. But meaningful police reform is not abolishing the police. It's not yelling and screaming at city council meetings and heckling people, private citizens, and intimidating them with cameras and it's so they've hijacked the cause. And now it's so extreme that you really need, this is a democracy. You need consensus for change. And they're not, that we're talking about things that are never going to happen and are a waste of time, like abolishing the police, as opposed to talking of things that are meaningful of what can our police force, what training can they do? What can we enhance in our police force that'll prevent this type of incident happening, and have a more positive relationship with the residents and the police, which I will say our police are fantastic. But there are, I will say too, there's been moments that I've questioned, and I think other people question, that our police have actions they've taken. So it's a conversation that's been hijacked, and we're not having now because of
that. I will say though that I do think there's room for all kinds of protest, and I do think there's legitimacy to how people want to express their anger, and this is one way. I don't think this is the most effective way at all. But Commissioner Golub spoke to this, and Dan, I really want to get your opinion, but perhaps we should play this clip of Commissioner Golub speaking to exactly this issue, because what they were saying to him was that, he has not represented the Black population in his position on the city council, and essentially he wasn't Black enough for them. And so here is his response to what Chandler was saying. Hold on.
Boy with a hoodie on. And that's where I am. And that's what I'm dealing with. And that's what I think about.
So I'm sorry, I'm pausing that for a second. The Saratoga BLM asked every one of the council members what their response was to the murder of Tyreek Nichols. And so this was Commissioner Golub speaking, telling them what his response was. So I'm going to start that over.
Yeah, they essentially accused Commissioner Golub of not showing up, not
anymore. I didn't turn on the TV, I didn't watch the video, and I never will. When that happens, every time it happens, I have a 10-year-old daughter I have to explain to it. That's where I am, Chandler. I have a 4-year-old boy who one day is going to walk down the street and be a big old boy with a hoodie on, and that's where I am, and that's what I'm dealing with, and that's what I think about. Every single time this happens. That's where I am all the time. So I get what you're saying. I get it viscerally. Being a Black man doesn't mean you go to the parades. It doesn't mean you go to the BLM events. I'm Black whether I follow you or not when I walk down the street. When I go to another town and I wear a hoodie and I drive and I get pulled over, I'm just as Black as you are. I may come at it from a different place. I may do different things, but I advocate and I work for change. It may not be the same way you do, but that's okay. It's like running the same play in football. You don't want everyone running the same damn play. You run a play and I run a play. It doesn't mean we're not working in the same direction. Doesn't mean I don't fight for a CRB and spend a year writing those 50 points you're sitting here screaming about. And
I was involved with that as well. And
right.
The reason why I'm screaming about it is because you're not screaming about it.
No, I'm not screaming your way. I'm not screaming your way. Chandler.
At the end of the day, you should be looking at every single one of them and telling them how hard you worked and the community worked for these 50 points.
Right.
Because it was not just
right.
you. It was several other people that worked. And several of those people keep standing up and asking what is going on. And you don't sit
So I'm going to pause it for a minute. You get the gist. This goes on for some time, but
was this after the feed was cut? Because I didn't catch this part last night.
I don't know when the feed was cut because I was there in person.
They adjourned once, cut the feed, and then came back maybe 20 minutes later, and then had to adjourn again for good. But so there was a pause during the adjournment.
So again, I couldn't tell what was being live fed and what wasn't because I was standing there. But I personally thought that Commissioner Golub, the way they attacked him was really hurtful and unfair to him. And I thought the way he described how he shows up and how he supports this cause was incredibly, I found it to be very moving. And I thought it really encapsulates the problem that we have in our country with a lot of controversial issues that need to be addressed and why they're not addressed effectively, because there becomes this idea of, well, you can only be angry in this way. You can only create change in this way. And if you're trying to do it a different way, well, you're not helping. And so you splinter all these people that should be together working towards making change, and thus change doesn't happen. But curious what your thoughts are, guys.
Yeah, I'll jump in there. First of all, I totally agree with you. I didn't hear this before until just now by Commissioner Golub. Wow, that was a eloquent, so well done, made me understand. And in a night of chaos, that was a moment of great clarity. So I commend him for that, and good for you, for Robin, for bringing this forward with us. Real quick, and I'm not going to dwell on this because I want to get to a point. I was appalled by what happened and what was said, especially, and I got to point this out, the continued accusation of the police department being murderers, that they're going to murder me, they're going to murder you, and they murdered Daryl Mount. I am really, really bothered by that, because that is so wrong, that is so incorrect, that is so without any evidence. But I'm not going to dwell on that. Let me make a point that some people may be surprised with. And it goes to your question earlier, Robin. Their complaints on the Civilian Review Board, they got a point. What is taking it so, I don't know if I agree with having a Civilian Review Board, but it was established. It was established. 100%. What is taking it so long?
Well, and I thought was one of the nastiest comments, and I can't remember who said it, was that there was a serious criticism of the 3 people who have been appointed to the CRB, including the chairperson, Kristen Dart, and that Kristen Dart was an example of tokenism, and that she was appointed simply because she'll just go along with whatever this administration wants and not really fight the fight. And I know Kristen really well, and that I was so offended by that statement, because Kristen Dart is someone who knows how to work within the system of government and knows how to work with these different agencies and get her mission accomplished. But she is not going to roll over for anybody. And she's going to fight as damn hard as she needs to fight to get it done. But she's going to do so, I think, in a way that's very skillful and effective. And that's what I saw from her when she was on the police collaborative. And so I thought that criticism was really unwarranted, because I think she is an amazing choice to chair the CRB. And the fact that she's agreed to take that on speaks volumes about how much she cares about this community and how much she cares about this issue, especially when she was on the police collaborative with Jason Golub and so many others who served, for months and put so much time and energy into coming up with these 50 points and this reform plan that has not been implemented. And I want to get to that, because I was a large part of that. And I want to explain kind of what was happening when we were leaving office and why more things weren't implemented when we were there. But I was really shocked at that criticism of her in particular. But you're right, Jim Montagnino had his CRB proposal passed in a resolution back in May, right? Now it's February. After he passed it, I assumed, and I think most people assumed, that he was then working behind the scenes to come up with how it would work, the policies, the procedures, how it would run, all the work that needs to be done to figure out how it's actually going to function in real life. And it turns out he was not doing any of that. And so then he asked, first it was like, you could apply to be on the CRB. I don't know what happened to those applications. Then in September, he asked the city council to appoint somebody, like each one of them to appoint someone to the CRB. It took them a really long time to make appointments. They've only announced, I think, like I said, 2 or 3. They were supposed to announce more appointments last night, but the people they appoint are then tasked with coming up with all the policies and procedures and how this runs, which is like a huge ask. And so it really is bullshit that Commissioner Montagnino hasn't gotten further with it.
More than him, though, Robin. More than him. The city council owns this.
The city council.
To the extent that it's a failure, all 5 of them own this. And
I have to also point out that because this was part of the 50-point plan that I voted for back in March of 2021, Commissioner Golub and I worked at the time to put together a proposal for a CRB in October and November of 2021. And basically the city council that I was on was critical of it. Saratoga BLM was critical of it. And so the consensus of the council and the public was that we should just knock it back to the incoming administration and let them handle it. But there have been, I mean, we put a lot of effort into trying to push that issue forward and put together a CRB that would be functional for the community. You know, that was trashed. Montagnino's tried to do it again. And I think their complaints about it are totally valid in terms of how long it's taken to get any forward progress there.
Yeah. And that's the problem, is that, you know, conversations like this are lost in the abolish the police are racist killers in Saratoga, you know, because these are the conversations that the city should be having of where's our police force. And let me ask you guys a question on this. Is that Saratoga BLM, Robin, especially during your, you know, and I don't know how much, I would guess politics played a lot in this. They were broadly supported by the city. You know, last night going against Democrats essentially, and some very progressive ones, like we talked about. They went after Manita for a song she sang, or Commissioner Shangvi. Do you think this is going to be the kind of the straw that breaks the back of the community support within Saratoga? Do you think people are going to start to say, well, you know, this is not a meaningful resolution to our issues, or a path to resolving our issues?
So my frustration with ELS and Saratoga BLM was really wrapped up in the fact that I asked them so many times, it's almost embarrassing, to come sit down with me, to meet, to have a conversation, so I could understand what they wanted to see happen in terms of actionable next steps in our community, in our police department, and try to put together, you know, put pen to paper and make some change that spoke to their concerns. And every step of the way, I was turned down. They simply would not sit down with me. And I have all the texts and everything, you know, to support what I'm saying right now.
Yeah, that happened with Commissioner Madigan. She proposed $30,000 for mediation.
Yeah. So
again, that was kind of disregarded.
Exactly. And so then to hear that this city council that they campaigned for and supported for, and, you know, or made promises to, and back and forth, that Commissioner Montagnino has not met with them, that Mayor Kim has not met with them, and they won't meet with them, was shocking to me, because I'm like, how, like, it's just how
Well, they push back, and I'm curious on that. And I don't know that any of us will know the true answer, but Commissioner Montagnino and Mayor Kim push back that, yes, they have met with them. They have offered to meet with them. So I wonder how much validity is in those accusations.
It sounds to me like maybe they met with them one time to kind of pacify them in the beginning. That was kind of my impression, but they were not willing to continue to engage in any substantive conversation with Saratoga BLM. And I do think that speaks largely to the fact that they got elected, and as politicians do, they didn't follow through with their promises because they were elected now, and they really didn't need the support of Saratoga BLM. And because they were in office. And I think that's really shitty. Whether I agree with what their promises they made were or not, you shouldn't lie when you're campaigning, and you shouldn't, you know, lie to the people who are supporting you and not follow through on your campaign promises.
Yeah, I don't know that. That's what I'm saying. I don't know that we know. Again, going on what you said, I don't know that we know that they've not met with them, you know, and maybe they've extended, you know, invitations. It's not within, you know, them to kind of the BLM movement to kind of bend the truth to fit their narrative at the moment.
I think that if they'd had any kind of meaningful or ongoing conversation, it would have been clear last night through their dialogue. I know Commissioner Golub, I know when he was running for election this past fall, I was, you know, involved in his campaign, and BLM was at virtually every single one of his campaign events. And so I know that they have, you know, his contact information, that they could contact him, that they could sit down with him. And I don't think they've made an effort really to do so. But with the mayor and the commissioner of public safety, it does seem like they have not had at least any kind of real significant channel of conversation or communication going there. That's at least how it appears.
But so Adam, can I jump in here to answer one of your earlier questions? You said, you know, is the community going to lose the connection with them?
Yeah,
the city council, and Jim Montanino is the only one that seemed to do it Tuesday night. Said, I'm not going to meet with you if you just agreed to something, and 5 minutes later you upended it because they were supposed to let the meeting keep going. So I give him some credit that he was demanding some sort of truth to their words that, you know, we're not going to get along if you're going to continue acting this way, I guess is it. And I think the city council has to establish some firmness here on this. And again, that doesn't mean turn your backs to them. That doesn't mean don't listen to them, but don't get beat up.
But to your point, Adam, I think what they did on Tuesday was really push away any kind of remaining support they might have had by going after people like Commissioner Golub, by going after people like Commissioner Songby. They really, by going after people like Kristen Dart, I mean, they're really pushing away as many people as possible. And so I think they've really, by and large, lost a lot of support. And it's really just because they haven't demonstrated that they're a group that you can work with productively to create legislative change, which is what I think generally, broadly speaking, is what they're asking for. But, you know, when year after year and protest after protest and press conference after press conference, you're passionately talking about no justice, no peace, you know, abolish the police and kind of these big general statements. What does that mean in real life in Saratoga Springs? What are your actionable next steps here to try to accomplish your goals? And I'm not sure they know what those are, to be honest with you. I'm not sure they know what those next steps are.
Yeah. So let's go back to last night, right? So essentially all the yelling, the not stepping down from the microphone, essentially it halted city business, right? Yep. The meeting was canceled. It's supposed to resume again tonight.
Which was shocking, by the way, that the meeting was canceled like that. I don't think that's ever happened ever.
Yeah. So I guess you know. So my question is though, and this happened. This happened, Robin, when you were at the city council, is that this scenario, I'm curious on how the city should handle this, right? Because essentially we can't let our city council be taking hostage and city business only conducted when it's you know, people aren't screaming and yelling. So the question is, what should the city council do? I mean,
I'll tell you what I think they should have done on Tuesday night. They should have, when things started getting out of control, they should have had a recess and cleared the room. No, everyone should have been asked to leave. They could all go and watch the live feed at home, but they should have said, we have had public comment now go on for an incredibly long time. People have had an opportunity to speak their piece. We now need to get on to city business, and we can't do that with people here interrupting, essentially filibustering a public comment period. And so everyone I would have cleared the room.
I wonder if that's legal though, right? Under open meeting laws, can you hold?
It absolutely is legal as far as I know, because the meeting is being live streamed. The public comment period went far beyond 15 minutes, and so I don't think there would have been any illegality there at all. But Dan,
even if in 6 months the Committee on Open Government wrote a scathing thing, and it wouldn't be scathing. It wouldn't be a flagrant violation, would it? There'd be a reason, public safety for one. and the city work has to get done. So if they were wrong, if they did that, went ahead and then, again, 6 months later, some bureaucracy said they were wrong, so be it.
Illegal to disrupt a government proceeding, is it not?
I'm sorry, what's that?
Is it not illegal to disrupt a government proceeding?
Oh yeah, at least to some extent, you could say it's, under the penal law, you could say it's obstructing governmental administration, maybe disorderly conduct. Right.
Not that,
and some are advocating arrest last Tuesday night.
No, that's
I think they would have hoped that would have happened. That would have added to their cause. I'm glad there were no arrests.
I didn't think there was any cause to arrest anyone. I think that would have been totally inappropriate. But
the whole Capital District is watching this. Paul Vandenberg on 1300. The newspapers are over. The whole Capital District is watching Saratoga right now because of the politics going on up here these past few weeks.
And the problem that Mayor Kim has that I think the rest of the city council really picked up on was that when people are speaking in public comment and it's a comment that he likes or that's favorable towards him or it's a person that he likes, he allows them to go over that 2-minute mark and he's much more lenient about it. When it's a comment that's not in favor of him or it's someone like me speaking who he just really doesn't like, the second that 2-minute mark hits and I keep going, I can hear him saying, cut her mic, somebody cut her mic. He really tries much more aggressively to shut those people down. And when people start picking up on that, you've lost, if you're not consistent about following the rules, then you've lost control. And, the audience and the people on Tuesday night picked up on that. He had zero control over that meeting from the get-go. I mean, his pleas to kind of stop and pause or can we adjourn the meeting were so really just kind of pathetic. I mean, there were multiple times where he was like, let's adjourn. Do I have a second? And I think Jim would be like, second. Everyone else just ignored them and everything kept going. It was not good.
In fairness to him, that was a tough situation. Did he handle it well? No. He needs to be more firm, have a better plan, have these things figured out ahead of time if this happens. But hey, one quick question. We have a guest and I want to bring him up. Robin, a quick question for you. Of the group last night that was maybe the most combative, with those, BLM and beyond, because it was the homeless issue as well. And I'm going to ask you to guess, and maybe you just can't. What number would you think are city residents? Is it 80%? Is it 40%?
So the Saratoga BLM group are largely not city residents. But I will say, I think that everyone has a right to speak about public safety in Saratoga Springs. Anyone who visits the town, comes through the town, or lives in the town absolutely has the right to talk about how they feel about their personal safety and their relationship with our police department while they're here. So while I don't think that it's fair that non-residents are able to blow up a public comment period like that and have a meeting canceled like that, I think that everyone's opinion is valid, especially when it comes to public safety and how they experience that in Saratoga. No, by and large, they are not city residents.
Okay. Well, yeah, and I understand your point. I agree with some of it, but when it goes to that chief of police candidate is no good. Wait a minute, I'm paying taxes here. You have no say in that. I'm sorry if you don't like that person. We, as the community, will, as the city residents and through our elected representatives, decide those detailed questions.
I'm really glad you brought that up, because one of the things that Saratoga BLM has also been really upset about are the 3 candidates who are up for police chief, because police chief Shane Crooks is retiring this June. And I've been very, very upset about how this has been presented by Saratoga BLM, because they have talked about these 3 candidates as if the police department or the city just arbitrarily selected these 3 people as the only candidates to become the chief of police, when we have civil service law that we follow, we have to follow. We have a civil service system that dictates who we can promote. And it's based on taking a test and who the 3 highest scorers are on that test. And then we're given a list from civil service of who those 3 people are. And that is the list from which you can promote. That's the system in which we work. The police department didn't choose that system. The city council didn't choose that system. That's just how our charter and our government operates. And so if people are unhappy with the candidates for chief of police or any promotion that's happening in the fire police department, it's incumbent on them to contact Carissa Salvo, who runs our civil service department, and talk to her about how we can, get our civil service postings out to a broader audience, or how we can work within the system we have to, in their minds, create a better group of applicants or so forth. But to blame the police officers or the candidates or the police department or the commissioner of public safety for who's up for chief of police is just bullshit. It's just total bullshit. And the fact that the city council doesn't correct that when they're making these public comments is really unbelievable in my mind, because it gives credibility to what they're saying. And it gives people the impression that these are just handpicked people. And these are the only 3 people we want as possible candidates for chief of police. And they're not telling people that there's a civil service system that is how this process runs. And I think that is really shitty, and it's a real disservice to the candidates. And I also think it's just really deeply personally unfair for these candidates to be maligned the way they've been maligned.
And one of them was singled out because he was working the night Daryl Mount fell off the scaffolding.
Correct.
And I feel so that is completely unfair. That's wrong. But I'll bet you $1 million that they're not going to pick him.
Well, listen, yes. Yes. There are the 3 candidates on the civil service list are Bob Gilson, who was the assistant chief and was defunded and demoted to a lieutenant by Commissioner Montenegro, Tyler McIntosh, and Paul Veach. Those were the 3 top scorers on that civil service test. And of course, the Saratoga BLM group has serious issues with all 3. Yes, they did talk about Tyler McIntosh being on duty the night that the Daryl Mount incident happened. And of course, inferred that he was most likely responsible or played some significant part in the death of Daryl Mount, when in fact, we still have no evidence at all that the police played any hand in Daryl Mount's death. It is still being litigated in a court of law. Commissioner Montenegro put out his report about this back in February that exonerated the police from having any culpability at all in how Daryl Mount died. The only assertion Commissioner Montenegro made was that certain things were covered up after the fact or not handled by that violated the policy after the fact.
Yeah, not covered up, but not thoroughly investigated.
Yes.
Would be my take on it.
Yes. So, so again, to say that about a member of our police department and infer again that someone was responsible for Daryl's death, it's just not okay. It's not okay.
All right, you guys want to talk about spy balloons?
We have a guest that's been patiently waiting.
I only have about 5 minutes left. So
now.
All right, let's do a quick toggle. Okay. Carrie, can you hear us?
Yes, can you hear me?
We can. We're going to do a hard left turn here.
Yeah, I guess so.
Hey, I know Carrie. Hey, how are you?
I'm doing well, Adam. How you doing?
Good to see you.
We were just talking about some seriously heavy stuff. I
know, I've been listening. It's been very interesting.
You want to weigh in or just jump to Union Ave?
Yeah, feel free to weigh in if you want.
I think that you guys have covered it pretty well.
Yeah, there is some dangerous waters. I would maybe recommend staying out of it.
Well played, Carrie. Well played.
Guys, I only have about 4 minutes. Unfortunately, I have an appointment at 1. If I drop out, though, I want you all continue the conversation, but I apologize that I have to have this kind of hard out at 1 o'clock. But Carrie, you're here to talk about the bike lanes that are being proposed on Union Avenue, correct?
Yes. Well, I wouldn't call it, it's not just bike lanes. It would be, enhancing the avenue.
The reimagining.
But I think where it's all coming from is that, the state is putting bike lanes in on their portion of Union Avenue from Henning Road to East Avenue.
I'm pulling up one of the renderings while we discuss.
Yeah.
So
as you can see from this rendering, I'm not sure where this rendering came from, but there's a lot more going on here than just bike lanes.
So Carrie, you're representing.
This is not an official rendering, I don't think.
But Carrie, I just wanted to kind of clarify for our audience. You're representing a group who has some concern about the plan for reimagining Union Avenue. Is that correct?
Yes, we formed a neighborhood group, Historic Union Avenue Neighborhood Association, because we want a seat at the table for what's going to be done as far as enhancements go, because we live along Union Avenue. We want to make sure that it keeps its historic character, and that it's made a safer thoroughfare. Because right now it's, at least the part of it by my house is treated like a racetrack.
And where's Carrie? Where's that?
I live between Court and Nelson.
Okay. I have to fully confess, Carrie, that I am one of those people who from time to time has come off the Northway onto Union Avenue. And it's because you've been going so, fast on the Northway and you kind of get on this straightaway. I have all of a sudden looked at my speedometer and been like, holy, I'm going way too fast here. Because that's just kind of how this, it's a really wide road. It's not very heavily traveled in the off season. And you can, I do catch myself like speeding on there. And so I can imagine, I think I heard the average speed was almost like 48 miles an hour in the off season.
Yeah. I mean, it looks like, a drag strip. It opens up, especially after Nelson Avenue. It's 70 feet wide, and it's just human nature to, if you have a car next to you, to just hit the gas and go. There's no obstacles. There's nothing to slow down. So, we'd like to see that changed. However, whatever elements, do that, I think, that's still to be decided. And there's different opinions within, our neighborhood group as far as what should be included. But the basic goal is to, enhance the historic, nature of the avenue and to make it safer.
So Carrie, the group we that's pushing this Reimagine Union, we met with them a couple of weeks ago, and they essentially, I think everybody's agreement that right now it's not working, or it could work better. They, proposed the bike lanes, it's buffered by the street with a median, shrinking it to one lane with a turning lane in the center. Is your group vehemently against that idea? Do they have, is there a general idea of what your group likes or doesn't like, or would like to see happen?
There's different opinions about, what should and shouldn't happen. I think we need to see what the actual plan is going to be. We need to look at the data. That stuff's going to be presented next Thursday night at a meeting, a workshop with Complete Streets. It was rescheduled from tonight, actually.
Yes.
So as far as, reducing the lanes down to basically what you see on this picture here, I think that's going to be looked at with, what that would do to traffic. If you look at, the traffic counts that we have now, it would seem that would work just fine. Union Avenue is not as heavily traveled as other single lane gateways to the city. So on the face of it, that would work, and that would really slow things down. And some people like bike lanes, some people don't like bike lanes. The city.
If I could ask Carrie, there was some request to slow it down. Your group was formed apparently because of the concern that maybe this was going too fast and you wanted to think this through better. Could you, and you've done that already somewhat, but could you encapsulate in one or two sentences what the concern, why you created the organization, and what the exact concern is?
The concern was born out of, there were city, I think public works employees that were out there basically measuring to just lay down bike lanes. And I think we have a great opportunity here to really do something for the avenue, whether it includes bike lanes or not, or lane reduction or not, to make it a much better and safer thoroughfare. And we want to be part of that.
That's great. There seemed to be some opposition within your group to the bike lanes itself. Yes. And is that, could you touch on that? There's been some debate in John Kaufman's blog, who actually lives, one block from Union Avenue, although I don't know that he weighed in, but between Ed Lindner of Saratoga and Jim Martinez, who was an architect, there was some back and forth. Do you care to focus in a little bit on that? Do you give a little more insight into the concerns over the bike lanes?
I think that there's questions about the bike lanes. If you look at, again, this rendering here, you have sidewalk and then green space and then bike lane and then green space again. So who maintains the bike lane? I think that's a major concern of my neighbors is, are we responsible for it? I think that's probably a pretty easy question to answer, because it's not going to be the same as this, but what they've done on Excelsior Avenue is put in a big, wide, two-way bike lane, and I don't know who's responsible for taking care of that. Is it the city? Is it the residents who,
Carrie,
right away goes through. I don't know. And then the other part of it is, I'm sorry, go ahead, Rob.
No. I was going to interrupt real quick. I actually think one of the pitfalls of all of these conversations, whether it's trails, bike lanes, et cetera, is the ongoing maintenance is something that's almost always ignored. And I can tell you that the public safety department is responsible for striping and restriping these things. But in terms of, grass and mowing the grass and keeping them just tidy and clean, that is, I'm not sure anyone knows who's responsible.
Yeah. Or shoveling and plowing even. I mean, is the homeowner going to have to shovel twice as much now, or is the city just going to run a?
I also
exactly. That's a question, that I think we'd like to understand, because
the devil's in the details.
Now you're supposed to maintain your sidewalk, even though it's in the city's right of way. It's the responsibility of, the resident to maintain that. And the other, kind of question is, well, you have already in the city a couple of bike lanes that were put in that still don't really go anywhere. Where does this one go? Is it going to continue through Congress Park? Is it going to go on Circular? I understand that you need to start somewhere, but it would be good to, have a plan so we're not like the Lake Avenue bike lane where it just ends.
I will say it's a bit problematic how you get to the end of Union and if you cross, there's no sidewalk on the west side. If you're going north, there's that kind of old, kind of brick, kind of disheveled kind of mess at the edge of Congress Park. Do you guys know what I'm talking about?
Oh yeah.
It's closed in the wintertime.
Yes.
Because the city doesn't maintain it. And it's odd that they wouldn't, we want to have this connectivity. You have the complete streets plan, and that pretty prominent spot of city property doesn't even have a maintained sidewalk on it.
I really wish the city would actually address the Lake Avenue bike lanes and fix that before we go on to something else. They're so incredibly unsafe. They are not used, and they need to be designed differently rather than just one little tiny white stripe that no one can even see and drivers don't even recognize as being indicative of a bike lane. To me, that doing the Lake Avenue bike lanes and the way that Peter Martin did it really actually hurt the cause of anyone trying to advocate for bike lanes in the future, because they were done so poorly. And so I think there's something to be said for, re-engineering that and doing it correctly before we move on to something else. But that's just my personal little opinion.
Yeah, that's an example that we look at. And Complete Streets, this Complete Streets Committee would agree that it was not done very well. And, we can talk about how the, different commissioners and their departments don't necessarily coordinate the best on different things.
Has there been, one of the concerns I've heard from other members of the community, and I'm not sure if this has been a concern with your group, but has been the water management and the drainage issues on Union Avenue, and how the water and stormwater would kind of puddle off to the sides of the street, and how that's going to be addressed with this new plan, because it sounds like it's something that could potentially be extremely expensive. Because as we know, under every street, under everything in Saratoga Springs, we've got a whole lot of water, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's another great question. I mean, again, you look at this rendering here, you're looking at, I don't know, tens of millions of dollars worth of work to build what we see here, and improve the infrastructure there. You're not just going to dig up the street and leave old water mains and all that kind of stuff. I would hope, but to put porous pavement in front of, the section between East and Nelson, might solve that pooling issue. But again, that's a lot of money in engineering and design. And where is all this coming from? Where's this funding coming from?
So I guess the takeaway, Carrie, though, it does sound like this is not oil and water here. Your group, the group that's pushing or pro this change, the change is needed, and this community just wants a seat at the table when designing this, to make sure that 5-10 years from now you're not stuck with something that doesn't work.
Absolutely. Yeah. Again, there's not any consensus on what elements should not be there. From our group, it's that we want it to be considered carefully, done right, and and the historic character of the street maintained.
All right. Well,
Go ahead, Adam. I was just going to wind down.
Yeah, I was going to wind down too, Kerry. Thank you for coming on. And Kerry, before we let you go, who do you got in the Super Bowl?
I'm going with the Eagles.
All right.
Defense wins championships. As much as I hate to say that as a Giants fan.
Well, hey, thank you for coming on. I'm a Buffalo Bills fan. I'm from Buffalo, and you got half our old team there, and you guys had a good season. Good for you guys.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming on, Kerry.
All right.
Yeah, my pleasure, guys. Thank you.
Okay. Dan, how about you, Dan? Who do you got in the Super Bowl?
I'm an AFC guy. I think Kansas City is. I don't know that they're going to win because they're the underdog here, and I don't know Mahomes' health. But my heart's with the AFC, and they're a class act. The coach, the quarterback, he is terrific when he's at full health. So I'd like to see KC pull an upset.
Yeah. Well, I was reading somewhere that they're a 2-point dog, which is incredibly. They're an underdog, but not by much. Yeah. It's going to be a great game. Patrick Mahomes has been there. He's won them. He's lost it. I think his experience comes through. I got Kansas City.
Good for you.
All right. Cheers and gears.
Yeah, I've got a couple. If you want me to start off,
go ahead.
And I alluded to this, folks. If you need, one daily newspaper, I guess first of all, I'd say I'm going to give myself a shameless self plug. SaratogaReport.com, Saratoga-Report online. But if you're a traditional newspaper person, the Daily Gazette is crushing it for Saratoga news. The front page today has not just the article about the Tuesday night's meeting, but the follow-up from that, as well as commentary there about Tuesday night's meeting from Andrew Waite. They've, in their living section, quite a bit here about Chowderfest this weekend, which is actually my second cheer. That we should. The weather looks kind of perfect for Chowderfest, so I'll segue into that. The Gazette is doing really good job of reporting Saratoga news, better than the Times-Union, and certainly better than the Saratogian, but that goes without saying. Segueing into my other cheer, Chowderfest is this weekend. Weather looks perfect for us, just cold enough to enjoy chowder, not cold enough to be miserable. High of 37 that day. No precipitation from what I'm seeing. So that's a kind of Chowderfest. When it's 46 degrees outside, it's really not fun to drink eat chowder. And when it's 15, you don't want to be outside. So that's perfect weather. Those are my two cheers. We jeered enough this week, so I won't have an official jeer.
Yeah, I'll share your cheer with the Daily Gazette. I've made my dislike of the Times-Union known of I think when media pushes political agendas, all it does is polarizes people. I think it's done on a national level to a really disservice and a fault to this country. But it's a shame to see it happen on the local level, and I believe the Times-Union does do that. The Daily Gazette does a good job of kind of looking at things impartially and breaking down what's really going on. My jeer goes to So in the city council meeting last night, I don't know if you saw this. A Skidmore student got up and kind of wanted to lecture the city council on the financial equity in Saratoga and the disparities of it. Skidmore College is $60,000 a year, 79,000 and change a year. So, he wanted, while driving on North Broadway, I saw these big mansions, and Saratoga has homeless. You're driving to your $80,000 a year school. Excuse me if we don't really take your accusing us of having privilege accusation too strongly. It's a little ridiculous, and I know it's a problem I do have with Skidmore and the students is that they are allowed to vote in our elections, and they're more involved with activism than they are with the betterment of the city. It's an issue I have. So that's my jeer for the week. Besides that, Dan, great show. It's nice to have Robin on. Nice to talk about the city council. City council's tonight, and we'll be back next week.
Yes, thanks. Folks, don't forget that Union Avenue workshop is a week from tonight, I believe, on the 16th. So if you're interested in that, it's a workshop. It's not a public comment. There's going to be tables where you can have your input with the people that are involved in this project. I meant to add that in, Adam. So thanks for closing this out here.
Yeah, no problem. We're at exactly 1 hour. That's our target. Stay charming, Saratoga.
Thanks for watching, folks.